Tianqi said immediately, "Mr. Wade can rest assured, I opened the clinic, not to make money, but to treat patients and save people. Patients are never charged for medical treatment, and only charge for medicine. If the family has difficulties, medical expenses are often exempted." Charlie said with satisfaction, "This is a good thing, keep it up." When Charlie just returned home, Fredman, who was finally cured of the root ulcer, left the People's Hospital and returned to Wilson's house. The reason why he came to the People's Hospital was mainly to find a doctor for another diagnosis and see if he was really well. The doctor also found it very miraculous. This was a serious ulcer that was about to be amputated, but he didn't expect it to be abruptly restored. After going through a series of inspections and confirming that the ulcer was cured, Fredman was completely relieved. After leaving the hospital, Fredman looked up at Orus Hill sky, and shook his head bitterly. He felt that the aura of Orus Hill was not compatible with him, so he planned to pack his luggage and return to Eastcliff immediately. Orus Hill has become Fredman's sad place. If it is not necessary, he will never want to come back in his life. Before coming to Orus Hill, he was a dragon and phoenix among the people. After coming, he lost his male prowess. Not only that, but also suffered all kinds of humiliation, and even almost lost the most precious thing. But what did he get? Nothing. Even the young and beautiful Wendy, after only a few days of getting started, he completely lost the ability to get started. And he spent 15 million to live a happy life in those few days. Thinking about it now, Fredman still feels pain. Where did Wendy know that she was already the woman with the least value for money in Fredman's eyes? She has been waiting for Fredman to come back, waiting for Fredman to regain his glory. After Fredman returned to the Wilson family, they saw Fredman coming back and hurriedly greeted him and said with joy, "Fredman, you are finally back. Has the Way family cured your illness?" Fredman said irritably, "The Way family couldn't cure my disease at all, so I asked Charlie to treat me in the end." "Charlie?" Wendy hurriedly asked, "Did he heal you?" Fredman sighed and said, "He's just cured the fester, but it still can't be used." Wendy said indignantly, "Then you shouldn't let the Way family go easily, especially that Verena. It was he who fooled you when you took their Way family's inferior medicine and caused you to suffer so much sin and so much suffering. Let them heal you for that too." Fredman said with a cold face, "Charlie was here today, so I won't continue to care about this matter with the Way family. After I return to Eastcliff, I will ask the Way family for an explanation." When Wendy heard this, she asked in surprise, "Mr. Fredman, are you going back to Eastcliff?" Fredman glanced at Wendy, and said lightly, "Of course I have to go back. Hasn't it been unlucky enough for me in Orus Hill?" When Wendy heard that the great god of wealth was going to leave, she was a little flustered, and quickly said, "But Fredman, I don't want to leave you, you take me to Eastcliff, okay?" Wendy knew that the Wilson family had no hope of turning over this time. Fredman promised to invest 80 million, but only 10 million was actually invested, which is not enough to repay the debt. She now feels that she has nowhere to go. Orus Hill already knows about being Fredman's lover. In the future, she wants to find a good person to marry in Orus Hill, and the chance is almost zero. Therefore, she can only hug Fredman's thigh tightly now. Otherwise, she will not be able to turn over in her life. However, how could Fredman take her to Eastcliff? After all, he is a person with a family, otherwise his wife would not have a quarrel. Besides, it is useless for Fredman to ask Wendy now. He can only see but can't eat. What's the use? Therefore, Fredman said rudely to Wendy, "Eastcliff is not something you can go to. Honestly, stay in Orus Hill." Wendy panicked and blurted out, "Then what should I do?" Fredman said coldly, "What else can we do? The fate of the two of us is exhausted. As for whether there will be fate in the future, I will talk about it when I come back from Eastcliff one day." Fredman was about to leave suddenly, and the entire Wilson family was confused. The old Mrs. Wilson also counted on Fredman to make up for the $80 million promised. If Fredman left at this time, it would be equivalent to kicking the Wilson family into the abyss. At that time, the Wilson family had no other way to go except bankrupt. Moreover, because the company still has a lot of debts that cannot be paid off, even the old villa of Mrs. Wilson will not be able to keep it. Therefore, Fredman almost became the only life-saving straw for Mr. Wilson. If he left, the Wilson family would be in desperation again. So, the old Mrs. Wilson was blushing, begging to Fredman, "Fredman, if you leave, our Wilson family will be over. We are your own family. Wendy has followed you again. You can't leave her behind." Having said that, the old Mrs. Wilson said busy, "Fredman, why don't you take her back to Eastcliff? She will be by your side in the future, and everything will be yours." Noah also begged and said, "Yes, Fredman, you are in Orus Hill these days. Our Wilson family treats you in every possible way. My father saved your father's life, so you should do your best and take her to Eastcliff." Fredman looked at the old Mrs. Wilson and Noah, with a look of disgust flashing in his eyes, and said coldly, "Joke, we are not relatives. Why are you following me to Eastcliff?" Speaking of this, Fredman said again, "Furthermore, although your old master did save my father back then, I invested $10 million in your Wilson family, and it can be regarded as paying off this favor. So from now on, we will owe each other no debt."